Hello everyone, it's Brett here, Lionheart 84, and we're looking at my large in-ground fig here, the one which I believe is probably a long do. There are one or two other possibilities it could be, but that's the most likely one. It's certainly not a Rouge de Bordeaux which it was bought as. The plant is really getting a bit out of hand. It's much too big for where or it's getting to the height now where it's too tall, so you won't, if it gets any fruits on it, you can't pick them. So I've decided to reduce it in height a bit. Now you could obviously, when you've got a fig like this, the correct time to prune them is of course in winter when they're dormant. Probably late winter is the best time in most figs, but there's no reason why you can't give them a light summer pruning if you've got shoots growing in the wrong direction in sort of like June or July, or an autumn pruning as I'm about to do, because while the sap's still flowing, there might be a small side benefit if I'm very fortunate. If I prune it now, and we're in the third week now of September, there's quite a few main crop figs on it that are not likely to make it to ripeness, but it might be worth me pruning it, because there is a possibility that by cutting off the branches, those figs might possibly develop to maturity by the end of October, if we had a very mild October, before the plant goes fully dormant. Now the downside obviously to pruning shoots off is that you will prune off your breba figs, which I'll show you on the branches when I get up the ladder and try and cut some of the tall shoots off. Obviously I'm not going to take off the lower ones because they'll be carrying figs on, which I should get next year, but I am going to take off most of the tall ones which would have brebas on them, but as I'd never be able to reach them anyway, there's no point letting them grow. So what I'll do is I'll hop on the ladder in a minute and just prune off a couple of branches so you can see what I'm doing and why I'm cutting them off, where I decide to cut them off. And if I can, I'll also try and show you the some breba figs, so that if you don't know, you'll know what to look for and what you'll be removing if you prune the branches off, if you prune all your branches off in winter. So I'll just pause the video and see if I can climb up the ladder. So in continuation of the video, it's the next part, talking about main crops and breba figs. Now to have a look at this shoot here, if we look back, you can see that this season's growth starts from there. Now from there the plant's growing up here, continued new shoot, and these are the main crop figs, which if you were in a warmer climate would develop to fruiting size. Now these aren't going to make it this year. We're in the third week of September and these are too small to get to mature fruit now. They probably need about another 7 or 8 weeks, and we've probably got 3 or 4 weeks of the weather being warm enough to stop this fig plant going into dormancies. It's highly unlikely that these size figs would get to an edible size. However, what I can show you on this one, if we look in the leaf axils, these small bumps or figs you see here in each of these leaf axils, these will be your breba figs for next year. Now basically what happens with these figs is they're too small to be recognisable as figs, but I kind of know what the appearance of them is, and they are tucked in tight against the wood that, as you can see, is starting to lignify now or go woody. It's still green right at the tip, but as the weather gets colder, this wood will go woody until it's completely hardy. And then these small fruits, these breba fruits, will survive tucked against the wood over winter because they're too small to be harmed by our normal freezing temperatures. Now there are some places figs will grow where it gets so cold it damages a lot of the growth, and they often die back almost to ground level. Now in that case these breba figs will not survive, but the main advantage of the breba figs, as soon as the plant starts to wake up in the spring, these figs start to swell at the same time that the plant starts to break out into new growth. So they get about a 3 to 4 week head start on the main crop figs. Now, left to their own devices, the main crop figs start to develop in about, I suppose, late June to early July, which means they really don't ripen if you get right main crop figs until into October. Now obviously I've done some pinching this year, which is an attempt to force the main crop figs to develop earlier. But in a lot of the UK you've got less chance of getting main crop figs unless of course you've got a greenhouse. Now if you've got a greenhouse you can probably force some of these figs like this might develop later into winter or even over winter on the plant and stay on till spring. The problem with them outside is once the weather gets cold and the plant goes dormant, the plant will cut the sap flow off to these figs and they will dry out and turn a yellowy brown colour, and once they've done that they can't develop into edible figs because the sap flow's gone from them, and that's the end of that fig. But these breba figs will be the ones that will start to develop, as I said, in late May, early June as the plant wakes up, and you should get these fruits probably, depends on the variety, but generally it's in August for me. Sometimes you can get a breba very late in July, and I've also had brebas early in September, but on the whole they tend to be in August. Now there are some varieties that don't, as a rule, produce brebas, but as you can see this one definitely does, because it's got plenty of these young figs, and of course they do sometimes drop off and don't develop to maturity. But the problem is, if I was to remove this branch here, which I'm not going to do because it's not a height that's a problem, if I remove this branch here, obviously I'll also be removing my brebas for next year, and then you've got to rely on trying to get main crop figs. But in the case of the taller branches on this tree, this branch here is probably only about 10 feet off the ground, which is reachable, but some of these other branches unfortunately are now 15, maybe 16, 18 feet off the ground, which means I'll never be able to harvest the figs, so I may as well cut them off and get it down to a lower height so that the figs I might get are a manageable height to look after them and protect them and harvest them, because you know, you only want to get so high on a ladder, and above that it's no use having fruit trees unless you've got fruit picking equipment. So I'm just going to hop back off the ladder and try and get up to some of these higher branches and just show you what I'm going to do with as regards removing the growing tips. So here we are on one of the taller branches. Now this has got a load of, as you can see, main crop figs on it, but unfortunately, given that we're late in September, it's highly unlikely they'll be likely to make it to maturity. Now you may have noticed that I'm wearing gloves. Now the reason for that, which I thought I might just mention in the video, is figs are very high sap producing plants, and for a lot of people find the sap extremely irritable to the skin and can cause all sorts of rashes. Now and it's worse if you happen to be in sunny weather, which I'm not today. Now I am just mildly irritated by fig sap, but the best thing to do is not to get it on your hands if you can avoid it, hence the reason I'm wearing gloves. Although you can obviously try and dodge out the way of it as well. What I'm going to do with this stem is I'm not going to take it right back. I'm going to take it to the point where I might leave 2 or 3 of these figs on, because if we've got a very warm October, I'm just going to take it off this growing tip above, if I can, left-handed, which is easier said than done, as I'm not left-handed. I'm going to try and take this off here without overbalancing and falling off. Now the sap flow will actually be much less at this time of the year because the fig will be starting to reduce its sap anyway, but you can probably just about see that milky sap dripping off, and that's what you don't want to be getting on your hands. So that was just to quickly show you. I've got some quite sickly looking branches here as well, which I'm going to move. I'm going to remove some of these completely because they've got very sickly looking leaves, and you can probably see there that there's almost no sap coming out of that, which means the sap flow is very slow. Might also explain why it's a bit of a sickly looking branch. So I'm going to get on with trying to reach the tallest branches on the tree, and it may well be by cutting off some of these branches I might force some of these figs to develop. That's the other reason I'm giving it a bit of a trim in August while it's still got some figs on it, just in case I can convince them to get to a ripe stage, but we'll see. So we'll come back to the video after I've done a bit of pruning. Now, just as a little add-on in the video, just to show you very quickly, I cut off a base shoot that the plant had grown in one season. This is a sucker from low down, and incredibly this has grown 8 feet in one season, this shoot from near the base. Obviously it was in the way, cluttering up. It was cluttering up and cutting off light to other plants, including the fig, and also probably taking energy from it, because the plant tends to put energy into these long shoots. But that's a good 8 feet long, so at least 2.5 meters. So I just thought I'd stop the video, or restart the video, just to show that for people that are interested. Quite remarkable, really. That will be going in the composting. And just to interrupt the video, if anybody is interested, a close look now they're off the tree. These are, or would be, brebas. These are next season's first crop of figs, and the fig will form them right up to the tip. Now next to those would be growth buds, but these are actually the brebas. So this size and smaller should survive the winter and give you your early season crops for next year. I'll just throw that on the ground. There you can see the sap dripping out, and we're done now. Now I've taken off about between 1 and 2 feet, so between 30 and 60 centimetres, so it'll give me more light on my decked area, and I've opened up the tree a little bit so it gives it more light. Now pruning it now won't do it any harm. It'll the sap will leak for an hour or two, and then it will seal itself, and there's a remote possibility that any figs left on the tree that are big enough might continue to develop into October, and I might get a couple more main crop figs, but that's going to depend obviously entirely on the weather and how warm it is, because actually we've had some quite cold weather already in the middle of September, which might force the fig trees into dormancy. Anyway, that was for anyone interested in why I'm giving it a prune in autumn. I just wanted to get the size back now, and it might possibly force a few more figs to make it to maturity, but otherwise normally I would suggest pruning your fig trees in sort of mid to late winter before they come out of dormancy, before the sap gets flowing, as that will be the time when they're least likely to suffer any harm when they're completely dormant. So thanks for watching the video. If you have done so, much appreciate it. Please give me a thumbs up. Share the video if you think it might be useful to anybody. Please subscribe to my channel, and remember to click on the bell if you'd like updates on new videos when they come out. I'll catch up with you all soon. Brett out for now.